Water isn't wet. Whatever water gets on is wet.
You are Locked On Fantasy Basketball, your daily podcast on fantasy basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I am the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com, and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball. Fantasy drafts are probably happening as we speak, coming up in the next week and a half as well. The preseason's underway. So what we're going to do in today's show is we're going to do some ADP battles, look at players who are available at around the same ADP mark, guys who generally are the same sort of player, and we're going to debate which guy we would choose in that spot. It's going to be me doing it. Matt Smith's going to be doing it via proxy, but joining me live on the show today, I do have with me Kyle McKeown. First of all, Kyle.
I love you guys.
Hey, what's
Except
up?
You guys.
Kyle, it's good to have you back on, and of course, Greg Ehrenberg is also here.
As Greg runs in, we realise this could get dangerous.
Yeah, and assuming this all works out well, this is the first time you've had guests on camera, am I correct?
I think about 3 or 4 years ago, I used to have guys on camera when we do a lot of live streams, but this is the first time in a few years that guys are here live on camera. So Kyle and Greg are getting their heads up on the screen for you guys watching on YouTube. You can see them up on that screen now. We've got quite a bit to talk about. We're going to be doing 15 separate ADP battles in today's show, so who knows how long this goes for. Hopefully it doesn't take up too much of you guys' time. Michael Bolton's ready.
Let's get to it.
All right, we will start by looking at these ADP battles. We will start at the top of the draft. We're talking about pick 4. And if we had pick 4, who would we go for? Would it be Giannis Antetokounmpo? Would it be Kevin Durant? Or would it be LeBron James?
LeBron James.
Greg, we'll start with you. Which direction did you go?
Yeah, so I went Giannis here. LeBron to me is the easy elimination. I don't consider him at all here.
Agreed.
So it's in between Giannis and Durant. It's pretty close for me. I go with Giannis just because I do feel like he contributes everywhere in every category. I know that Durant does also. But Giannis, I still think there is room for upside. I think that Kyle made some really good points about him on Basketball Monster, about some concerns about how many minutes is he going to play. Because Budenholzer is the coach of the team now, which in theory is an upgrade because he's a better coach than Jason Kidd. But one issue is that he doesn't usually play starters over 34 minutes, was I think the number that Kyle had said. But with that, I still think there is a chance that if there's any player he's going to play over 34 minutes, it would be Giannis. And if Giannis plays the 36 to 38 minutes, I think he has potential to be the number 1 overall player this year.
Well, last year he played 37 minutes a game and he was still the 8th ranked player. So there is still a leap for him to get to. It's got to be improving three-pointers, improving free throw percentage for him to jump up. But those guys between 3 and 8 are all so close to me. I agree with you, Greg, that LeBron is out of there. I included him in this because his ADP is number 5 over on Yahoo. We've got Giannis with an ADP of 4 and Kevin Durant with an ADP of 6. So they're all in that zone. Kyle, you also went with Giannis Antetokounmpo at pick number 4.
Yeah, I mean, Greg touched on pretty much everything that you need to know, but another argument about it is just the idea that at age 23, Giannis still has so much room to grow, and if Budenholzer does put him in better positions to score more efficiently or to set up his teammates better, we know that there's more room for growth with Giannis, and the ceiling with him is the sky. So I know, Josh, you like to make the argument about Family Guy and you can either have a boat or what's in the box, but, a boat might be in the box, but it's a little bit different with Giannis. And you could also argue that Giannis perceivably is more healthy or is more likely to be healthy than KD or maybe not LeBron, because LeBron played in all 82 games last year, but when you're looking at the opportunity that Giannis might have this season and having the new coach there's enough unknowns, and most of them have to do with his upside. It's not like we're sitting here saying like there's downside anywhere for Giannis, because there's really not. We already know he's going to take more threes. We know he has the ability to get more steals, to get more blocks at his size and becoming a better player. He's going to continue to score more craftily around the basket, and he already does that at such an amazing way. He might get more assists. I mean, there's so many different ways for him to improve his game that you know that there's the potential for him to be the number 1 overall player in fantasy for a given season. So making an investment in that in the year it might happen, I know, Josh, what's fun is winning, but I want to invest in winning with Giannis if I've got the fourth pick here.
Yeah, look, that's completely.
One thing I'm just going to interject with real quick. First off, I'm not convinced that Giannis isn't a boat himself already. Like that's a realistic possibility here. And then also in terms of the 3-point shooting, we saw him make just under 1-3 a game post All-Star break last year. And just given his age, I think that his numbers should all continue to trend up. So I think that we could realistically see 1+ 3-pointer a game from Giannis this season.
Yeah, look, that's a possibility. There's also the possibility that he does that, but he also does it at such a low percentage that drags his overall field goal percentage down, which is a strength there with Giannis. There's absolutely no argument with putting him there at number 4. I had Kevin Durant. Matt also had Kevin Durant as that guy. Especially in a roto league, Durant ticks pretty much every single box. We're not as worried about KD resting during head-to-head playoffs. There is still some risk there. I do think it is between Giannis and Durant at that spot, given the ADPs of those guys, and I wouldn't be considering LeBron in that area for fantasy drafts. The next one we're looking at pick 8. LeBron is also here because we also had him a bit lower. I only include him in that early one because of where he was getting drafted on Yahoo. We've got LeBron here. We've got the fun guy, Kawhi Leonard.
I'm a fun guy.
Steph Curry and Russell Westbrook in the mix there at pick 8. I'll start myself off, me and Matt again, going together by taking Steph Curry here at number 8 over LeBron, over Kawhi, over Westbrook. Now, Kawhi's got that ability to be a top 5 player. We saw that in his last 2 healthy seasons. He's getting to the line a shit ton in the first 2 preseason games for some weird reason, not hitting his free throws. And on a per game basis, Kawhi might be fine to take it ahead here, but I am going with Steph. I feel pretty confident in what he's going to do. I'm not worried about the ankle injuries from last season. He's been remarkably healthy before last season. Again, you could easily make the argument for any of these guys. Maybe not Westbrook given the knee injury, which I am a little bit concerned about. But me and Matt have both gone with Steph here. Strong historical production, strong per game numbers. Who knows when they're going to miss, if they're going to miss. And missing games could happen with anybody, and they're both entering the season healthy. Greg, you have also gone with Curry, so I'll get back to you in a sec. But Kyle, you are the odd man out in this group, taking LeBron at pick number 8. Are you expecting more of what we saw from LeBron last season? You're not buying into the taking the foot off the accelerator type narrative that's been put out there a little bit?
I think you can look at it a couple of different ways. The fact that LeBron might be invigorated being in LA. He did play all 82 games last year. He played a ton of minutes. So who's to say that he won't play those same minutes again? Luke Walton's not going to dictate how many minutes LeBron plays. LeBron's going to tell him how many minutes he's going to play every game. So if LeBron wants to play 36 or 37 minutes a game, he'll do that. Beyond that, you're looking at the other guys, and I mean, Kawhi and Westbrook are question marks because of, yes, we've seen Kawhi play in 2 preseason games now, so you feel a lot more confident about him playing this season and being healthy, and it even makes you look back on last season and say, was he actually hurt or was he just emotionally distraught? With Steph Curry, I would go Steph Curry here if this was a rotisserie league 100%, and I would consider Kawhi in that package with Curry in a rotisserie league. But for head-to-head, I'm looking at the potential of what LeBron could do on this LA team. The idea that if he is playing center more and trying to protect the rim more, maybe we get an absurd amount of blocks from LeBron this year that we weren't expecting. Or maybe playing off the ball more on offense allows him to score more and do that easily so that he has more energy on defense. So then maybe his steals tick up or something. And yes, I'm expecting a downward trend in assists, but you're just seeing a lot of teams spread the ball handling around these years or this season and more every season. So it's becoming less and less about having that one lead ball handler. Now you just got 2 to 4 on every team. Yeah,
pretty much. We see so many big men bringing it up, small forwards bringing the ball up. Anyone's got this opportunity to bring the ball up the court, and it feels like it is going to start to trend that way in the NBA with just multiple ball handlers, playmakers, and mixing things up on pretty much a nightly basis. Greg, you did go with Steph as well. Anything different to what I said on Curry there?
No, I think the only thing I'd bring up is that I really do have significant concerns about this Lakers team. And it's hard for me to envision how all these pieces fit together. Now, LeBron is LeBron. He's terrific. I think he's going to be great. But just the players around him, it's such a weird fit that I do worry, what is it going to do to his counting stats? And for that reason, I would take Kawhi ahead of him. I would take Curry ahead of him. I would still take LeBron ahead of Westbrook just because of the injury to Russ. But I think for the concerns I have with the Lakers is one of the reasons I have Curry and Kawhi ahead of them.
Yeah.
I didn't watch the first two. There's two Lakers preseason games, I believe, already. I only watched the highlights for each of them, but I watched the 10-minute extended highlights where it's every single made shot and all the good defensive plays and whatnot. And they're fun. They are a lot of fun. Like, I hate that I am falling in love with this Lakers team, but when you see any and all of these guys bringing the ball up the court, or you see one of them, there's just so much passing going on because of all the guys they have right now, and they still don't have Lonzo in there, who's arguably, with Rondo, they're like 1 and 1A as far as passers go. And then you got LeBron at 1C. It's just nuts. And Brandon Ingram showing off some of his passing too, and you're just like, this is going to be so much fun. So I'm kind of buying into it now.
It is fun. The ball movement, the pace, they were pushing the pace real hard in that second preseason game. And Lonzo's a guy who accelerates the tempo pretty much any time he's on the court, and we haven't even seen him yet. So getting him back in that mix is going to be very interesting. So that Lakers team is going to be definitely fun to watch, something I'll be paying huge attention to, as I'm sure all NBA fans will be across the season. Let's move now to the end of the first round, start of the second round. I've got 4 guys here, Jimmy Butler, Joel Embiid, Victor Oladipo, and Paul George. I'm including Butler there because our per-game projections, I've got him fairly high now. Of course, we don't know what's going to be happening with him. It seems to be dragging out even more. And it's, I think, realistic that none of us are picking him here at pick 12. Embiid, Oladipo, and George are probably the 3 more realistic options there. Myself, Matt, and Kyle, we all went with Joel Embiid. But Greg, you went with Paul George there at pick number 12 if he is available. Paul George has an ADP of 14 on Yahoo. On ESPN, it's ridiculous where he's ranked 25th. Embiid's ADP is 17 on Yahoo, 15 on ESPN, and Oladipo is 12 on Yahoo and 20 on ESPN. But all those guys are in that mix at the end of the first round, start of the second round. So Greg, Paul George, why are you the odd man out here?
Yeah, so part of this, or actually most of this, is because of the injury to Westbrook's knee. So if Westbrook is going to miss time to start the season, and we could possibly see a re-injury of that knee. We saw this a few seasons ago. Westbrook had the knee surgery, had to have a second knee surgery, and ended up missing a large chunk of the season. The numbers for Paul George with Westbrook and Melo off the floor last year, his usage was ridiculous. So if there's the chance that we're going to see Westbrook miss an extended amount of games, like the upside for Paul George is really absurd this year.
Yeah, look, that's true. We don't know how much Westbrook's going to miss. I think he'll be back fairly soon, but re-injury is a real significant issue now. Kyle, you, me, and Matt all went with Embiid. I just think getting a center and getting a center who can be efficient in terms of free throw percentage and getting those blocks is pretty tough to do, and getting Embiid in this area. That's why I look at him there. I don't look at him as a guy who I think, in terms of my per-game projections, I've got Paul George above him and Oladipo slightly below. But just trying to get that center is why I would take Embiid there at pick 12. That's the same reason that Matt gave. Kyle, is that what you're looking at with Embiid going there at 12, even though you might not have him projected as the 12th best player overall?
Yeah, he actually falls at 11th in mine.
Oh, well,
and I'm so intrigued by his upside because I think we could see him play more minutes than what I've projected Joel Embiid at, and that's 32. I think that there are certain aspects of his game that are still untapped or still developing, and to watch what he did in those first 2 preseason games too, the way that he so methodically would just go into the post and push people around and play that bully ball down there, it gave you feelings of like you were watching Shaq again, where he would just walk in and throw his elbows into whoever the hell was guarding him and just lay the ball up. And the idea that we're going to have a dominant postman like this, there's not a lot of Tim Duncans around the league this now to guard somebody like that. So he's just going to walk through a lot of people this season. And I'm really interested. Like, if somebody told me they wanted to take Joel Embiid because he's a center eligible player at the 3rd or 4th pick over a Karl Anthony Towns or somebody else, I wouldn't necessarily scream at that.
I would.
He's definitely he's definitely got top 8 upside, I would say. Like, I've only got him projected at 31 minutes, but if he comes in and plays 33 a night, then he jumps into the top 10, maybe the top 8. There is Towns, there is Jokic in that mix as well, but he's got clear upside. And to look, if he somehow gets to 34 minutes, which I don't think they're going to do, then Kyle, that third pick, fourth pick, that could be realistic to have him there blocking 2 shots per game, going 25 and 12 and getting 3.5 assists. And if he bangs in the threes at the same rate he did as a rookie, then that goes up even further. So there is that upside there. I think the likelihood of him pushing to 34 a night is pretty low, just given the I guess cautious nature of how the Sixers, and rightfully so, how they're going to be treating him. But I love him there at pick number 12 in fantasy drafts for this coming season.
So one thing, like I agree that Embiid does have the top 3 or 4 upside, but I definitely wouldn't take him there.
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
I
that's
agree.
about mitigating risk.
I like to get hopeful maybe a little bit, or I get excited and I like to just like talk about the absolute ceiling with guys sometimes. But that's where I see it being with Joel Embiid. Like next year, we might be looking at it and being like, he has to be a top 3 pick.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
You could make that argument with Jokic as well, who was the number 2 player post All-Star break last season behind Anthony Davis. Like there's a lot of these guys who have that upside. If Butler leaves Minnesota, what's Towns' upside? So they're 3 centers who could be pushing up pretty high. If Kawhi is back to normal, he pushes into that discussion. There are so many guys, and that's why when we're talking about these picks, like, you could make easy arguments for Towns, Durant, Leonard, Curry, Jokic, Giannis, and Embiid to be top 4 guys. And that's 7 guys that I mentioned there.
Josh, what was your reaction to that first Minnesota game? Because guess who took the 4th most shots on the team?
Yeah, it was Towns, and it wasn't like some of those games last season when he got really low field goal attempts, and you looked at it and go, man, only 7 field goal attempts. He had like 9 free throw attempts, so he was getting the ball. He was just getting fouled a lot. But I believe in that first preseason game, he had 1 free throw attempt, so it wasn't as though he was even taking shots and getting fouled on them. It was just consistent bafflement. And Derrick Rose scored 16 points and did it well, but he took 10 shots.
Lead the team in usage.
I don't know. This is one of the most dominant offensive center in the NBA at the moment. Maybe it's Davis, but is Towns a better offensive player than Davis? I don't know. It's pretty bloody close, and just to limit him to his and it's not like it's one game in preseason. This is an ongoing theme from what happened last season with the way that these guards treat him, with the way the coaching staff treats him and doesn't demand that he gets it. And I guess some of the blame goes on him with some of his passivity. I never can say this word. His passiveness. Let's go with that one. Which is
okay,
annoying.
but you could, you know what? But I'm going to give Karl Anthony Towns like 1.5 passes on his defensive lapses each game too, because he's probably sitting there, like metaphorically holding his head in his hands, going, "When in the hell am I going to get the ball? Like, what is going on with this offense? Why is Derrick Rose taking so many long 2-range shots? What is going on?"
And Towns was better as a rookie defensively than he is now.
So last year with Butler off the court, Rose led the team in usage. I really think that if nothing else changes with this team, like they have to trade Butler eventually. This team is totally ridiculous. But eventually Butler's going to get traded, and we don't know exactly what they're going to get back. But as the team is made up now, if you ask me to bet who's going to lead the team in usage, I would take Derrick Rose.
Yeah, and that's
They
frightening.
have to fire Tibbs. They've got to fire that dude.
Yeah.
He's you can't, like, I know they just signed Karl Anthony Towns, so you can't lose him, but you're going to lose him. Like, you're going to lose him.
Yeah, because he's going to come in with a trade demand at some point and say, look, this is bullshit. Like, what is
He's
this?
an MVP level player, and Tibbs isn't going to give him that opportunity, and that's infuriating.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because of who? Because of Andrew Wiggins and Jeff Teague? I feel like a Fox News host yelling right now.
Let's
Go!
All right, let's move on to the next one. It's pick number 22. We've got 3 guys up for debate here. Drew Holiday, Devin Booker, and Donovan Mitchell, who are all going in this range at the end of the second round, start of the third round. Matt went with Drew Holiday there, just marginally in front of Devin Booker, mainly because of his higher field goal percentage and assists per game, and the fact that the Pelicans will be looking for playoff seeding around the fantasy playoffs time, so really still competing there. Now, there is some risk that Holiday doesn't keep up that large field goal percentage he had last season. If that drops off, some of his value may dip, but the rest of us all had Devin Booker. I think he will be the starting point guard, and even if he's not, even if they start a point guard next to him, it's going to be James Harden playing alongside Patrick Beverley. He's going to see the assist numbers rise, and maybe his usage falls marginally, but it should see his efficiency rise up as well. But getting to 6.5 potential assists, and if he can actually get like one steal a game, then that value is pretty solid, I believe. I'm not worried about the hand injury. Who cares if he misses one game at the start of the season or 2 games? I don't think it's an ongoing thing. Hopefully the surgery's corrected that, but we've all taken Devin Booker there. Mitchell will need to take a pretty significant step up from about the 45th ranked player he was last season. We all loved Donovan Mitchell, but over these guys who were around this zone last season, I find that a little bit harder to believe. Kyle, do you think that they're going to be putting Booker into that hardened role? Or we heard those statements from Kokoshkov earlier in the offseason, no, he's not going to be playing point guard, but everything what they're doing now, it seems to point towards that's what's going to be the case.
I mean, it's more, you could actually call it an exaggerated Donovan Mitchell role, since Kokoshkov's coming from the Jazz and he's implementing a pretty similar offense where you're going to have multiple ball handlers doing things. And except I think Booker, there's just less around him than what Mitchell has on the Jazz, especially with Ricky Rubio being there and Joe Ingles, the way he showed out as a ball handler last season too. So on the Suns, there's just not as many ball handlers, so you're looking at and also not as many scores. Yeah, maybe we'll see how things kind of pan out this season. But you're just looking at Booker and you feel like there's a higher ceiling than what's available to the other guys. Love Holiday's defensive stats, and same for Mitchell in regards to his steals.
Yep, Greg, anything for you to add there with Booker?
No, really the only thing that made me consider anybody else was the hand injury. Like if it wasn't for that, I would easily have him ahead of these other guys. It's still Booker for me. If you're concerned about the injury, I can't fault the Jrue Holiday pick. But per game, I expect Booker to be better than these guys. And I think that there's a chance that Booker takes a massive leap and is like a first-round player this year.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate chance. I'm not sure if Holiday can extend that far, and Mitchell to get that far would be a pretty large step. So I do agree with you on that, as obviously we all chose Devin Booker there in that slot at pick number 22. Let's say we hypothetically had pick number 42 in a draft coming up. I've narrowed it down to Al Horford, Blake Griffin, and Miles Turner based on the ADPs of these guys. If we look, and I've just got to find my numbers now because I've lost them, but Blake Griffin's got an ADP of 42 over on Yahoo. Al Horford, I believe, is about 44 actually. He is there as well. Miles Turner is right around that 40 mark as well. A guy who was a pretty big disappointment last season. I'm the odd man out in this group with Greg, Kyle, and Matt all taking Miles Turner. Kyle, I'll let you have the floor first with Miles. He was disappointing last season, and I don't believe in penalizing people because they let you down the year before. But what are you expecting the improvement in Miles' game to be this season?
I would expect Miles Turner to be more efficient and to take on a slightly larger role in the offense. He was working on his off-the-dribble three-pointers a lot this offseason, so hopefully they just kind of even throw him the ball as he comes across the half court and let him take those shots as the trailer. For the most part, you're looking at your options there and you're saying, okay, we're choosing between a center-eligible player in most respects, and I would want to get the blocks that Turner offers if I'm not punting that. So if I was punting blocks, yeah, I'd be looking at Griffin here, but hoping to get those defensive stats and the all-around upside that Turner has in regards to his potentially elite percentages. In addition to having that guy who's not only protecting the rim but also stretching the floor, you like the combination of what he offers there as the quote-unquote unicorn.
Look, I was big on Turner last season, and of course he didn't live up to that. I thought he'd take a big step forward in his offensive responsibility. In fact, his usage went down, and now they're a team that adds Tyreke Evans, another guy who needs the ball in his hands a lot. So I'm just not sure where Turner is going to get that increase in usage that we so hoped for him last season. Domantas Sabonis played very, very well last season, and I expect him to see a slightly increased role. So I'm a little bit skeptical on Turner, but the three-point shot blocking efficiency combination that Turner can bring is obviously really, really interesting, but will he get to 32 minutes a night? Will he push to 22% usage? If he can do those things, then he is the guy here, but I'm not quite buying that that's going to be the case, but no problem there, and I think he's clearly over Al Horford in that option. I think Horford's a guy that takes a step back for this season. I've got Griffin here. He was putting up massive assist numbers. The injury worry is a concern, and it would depend on who I grab with some of my earlier picks as to whether I take this risk on Griffin, but I think he could maybe even be a top 35 guy, averaging 20 points with 7 assists. He hit 2 threes per game post All-Star break as well, which is interesting. His free throw percentage is fine. It used to be a real pain in the ass early in his career, but it's fine now. Field goal percentage is a worry, but I'm okay with grabbing him there. Just trying to get a high usage, a scoring guy, and assists, which can be a little bit difficult to find later on. So that's what I'm looking at with Blake in this area. Greg, are you buying the Turner bump in usage, or what are you looking at with Turner in terms of how he improves on what he did last season?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way that we're going to see his fantasy value improve is just with playing time. If you look at 2 years ago, he played 31.5 minutes, and last year he played 28.5. Now, so the reasons that he played less minutes, I think, are twofold. One, it was injury related, which I think is maybe not a huge concern for me. He had some weird injuries last year. He was banged up the entire season. He had a knee issue. He had concussions. So there was a lot of weird things that happened with Turner, and I don't really think any of it is something to be a long-term concern. He just got banged up early last year and was never able to get himself to 100%. And then the other thing also, he had some foul issues last year. And I think both of those are things that we could see improve this year. And if that's the case, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he plays 31, 32 minutes, which doesn't seem like a huge jump from 28 minutes. But when we're looking at fantasy stats and how that impacts somebody's counting numbers, those 4 minutes could have a pretty big difference in where we see somebody ranked at the end of the season.
Yeah, look, it does. I've got him projected out at 30 minutes exactly for this season, but getting to 31 or 32 wouldn't be crazy to see him do that. Kyle's got him at 30 as well in terms of his projections for this coming season. Let's move on to the next one. We're looking outside the top 50 here. Pick number 54. A bunch of small forward eligible players: Gordon Hayward, the artist formerly known as Taurean Prince, and Joshy Richardson. Matt is the only one of us that's taking Josh there. He's buying into the talk from Spoelstra, from Riley, from Richardson of a growing offensive role. And you can take these things with a grain of salt, but when it's just coming from so many different angles, you have to get the feeling that they are looking at Richardson in a larger role offensively. The blocks are obviously fantastic from a guard. The steals, he was a 3-point dynamo after December last season, 40% in nearly every month until maybe April. Struggled a little bit in the playoffs, but Richardson is fine in this area and could very easily crack the top 40. Greg and Kyle, you both went with Gordon Hayward. Now, he is obviously, we have a little bit of a concern, or we did have a little bit of a concern in terms of how the leg injury has gone, but he's played in a couple of preseason games. He's got to shake off some rust, obviously, but he's a guy that was a top 30 guy back in his time in Utah. Now, I don't think he's going to get to that level, Greg, but do you just have more confidence in an established guy like Hayward versus Richardson and Prince, two younger players?
Yeah, so Hayward also is somebody who really could contribute across the board. And the other thing that I think there's upside for him that maybe isn't being considered, it wouldn't shock me if he was just crazy efficient this year. I could see him kind of being like the poor man's Kevin Durant type thing, where you just put him in this really good system with a lot of good players around him, and maybe we see his counting stats come down from what he was in Utah, but he could really put up a really good true shooting percentage with maybe a couple made threes per game, high free throw percentage. And the field goal percentage was a little bit lower most of the time when he was in Utah, although did get as high as 47%. I think that he could be in the 47 to 48% range on the high end for his ceiling.
I've got all these guys here pretty closely ranked as well. The ADPs are pretty closely moved around as well, although both Prince and Richardson on Yahoo are both ADP outside the top 60, whereas Hayward is at 48, but we've got them all ranked in that same sort of a range. Kyle, your take on Hayward, what have you seen from him in the preseason? Has that assuaged any concerns you may have had with him heading into this season?
Yeah, I'm just I never really felt like we had reason to believe that he was going to the injury was going to linger or be an issue. I get it. He might take a little bit of time getting up to speed, just not having played basketball for a year. But when considering taking Hayward over Taurean Prince or Josh Richardson, I think that you're more certain to get production from Hayward than you are from the other guys. From Prince, I don't believe that everything that he did in the second half last season is going to translate to this season. We also saw a big stretch of games where Prince was just trash and couldn't hit a shot last year too. So it's kind of seeing the bottom that is there for Prince. You're never going to get there with Hayward. And with Josh Richardson, there's just so much. What's going on with that Miami team? There's so many guys that they like to keep in the rotation, like Rodney McGruder, and they're talking up Derek Jones, and you're just like, there's not enough room. Yeah. What are you doing?
Someone asked me about Derek Jones the other day, and I went, "That's the Heat love him. That's great, but look, is he the 13th guy? Like, where is he fitting? Like, where are the minutes there? Is it ahead of Dragic? Is it ahead of Wade? Is it ahead of Tyler Johnson? Is it ahead of Richardson? Is it ahead of Winslow? Is it ahead of Magruder? Is it ahead of Waiters when he's healthy? Like, there's like 8 guys there that probably are ahead of Derek Jones, and it's going to be weird to find out. I think Tyler Johnson's going to suffer a pretty big hit, and I also think they're preparing for Dion Waiters not to be there for big chunks of this season. I went with Prince here, but it could easily be discussed to go with any of those, or persuaded to go for any of these other guys. I think with the Richardson situation, I do buy in, but I think there's an element of shakiness into how they're going to use him and what they're going to do, as you just mentioned, Kyle. And with Hayward, I worry that maybe they do knock the minutes off a little bit. Maybe the usage gets split so much that it does impact what he can do, whereas Prince, on a team that is looking for someone to step up, now he won't do what he did post All-Star last season. He was putting up huge numbers, and he won't get to that level, but I feel pretty good about him stabilizing in these mid-rounds. And I think all 3 of these guys at their current ADP are pretty good value players and should be all top 50 guys, and all of them have their ADP outside the top 50 as it currently stands. Pick 68.
Before we move on, I have a quick question for you, Josh. Potentially Butler getting traded to Miami with Richardson moving to Minnesota, or even the possibility of Butler playing alongside Richardson. Does that concern you at all with where you would take him?
If Richardson moved to Minnesota, I think it would bump him up, because then I would have no issue about him playing. Like, he'd go from 32 minutes to 36, 37 minutes pretty much straight away.
Not 40.
Look, he might. Who knows what he would do.
Might.
What was that, Kyle?
I just said he might.
Yeah, look,
I'm just over here like fantasizing about Josh Richardson actually playing 38 minutes a game.
If he went to Minnesota, then in a Butler trade, then I think I would take him almost no doubt in that scenario. We wouldn't have this concern. Like, at the moment, I'm a little bit shaky on him. Like, if Butler does come and he doesn't leave, that's going to impact what he can do. That's another reason why I'm a little bit shaky. What are they going to do with Wade, who's going to jack as many shots as possible and be one of the least efficient players in the NBA, which is a concern as well. So if he did go to Minnesota, that would be great. If Butler came to Miami and he didn't leave, I think it would be really, really bad for Richardson's value. So that's why there's a lot of shakiness there with him as to where you're going to pick him. And for a guy like Prince, I just don't have those question marks over him as I do for those other players. But those questions for Richardson could be easily solved once Tibbs pulls his finger out of his ass and executes a deal. Pick 68, we're looking at big men here in this area. Yusuf Nurkic, Hassan Whiteside, Dwight Howard are all in this sort of zone as big men for this season. Greg, you are the odd man out, and you took Hassan Whiteside, who's looked really good in a couple of preseason games that have gone down for Miami. I still have some worry there was no Bam Adebayo in those games, and who knows how he's going to fit. No James Johnson either, which would impact some of Whiteside's minutes. But are you buying a resurgent Hassan Whiteside?
So I'm not buying a resurgent Hassan Whiteside. I'm buying the potential of a resurgent Hassan Whiteside.
That's fair enough.
And if you look at other guys that are in this category, like Dwight Howard, one of the reasons I didn't put him in is just because he's so specific to build and whether it's roto or head to head. So that kind of took him out of consideration for me. Whether you want to go Nurkic or Whiteside, I would say Nurkic is probably the safer pick, but I really like the upside of Whiteside. Like, I found myself taking him in a lot of my mock drafts, and it's just because if we get the Whiteside of a couple of years ago, like, you could get a top round pick player in kind of the middle rounds. So the pick to me is based on the upside.
Yeah, look, me and Matt and Kyle all went with Nurkic, and look, seeing what's happened over the preseason, you got to really be careful of how much you're buying into it. But given that upside there, I may change that decision and go with Whiteside. His free throw percentage can be a problem. We've seen that from him in the past, that can be a real issue, and I don't think he's going to be blocking the same amount of shots that he had in the past, where 3 years ago he was at 3.7 blocks, which made him a first-round player, and that has dropped off pretty considerably since then. But he is someone who is an interesting guy here, probably a little bit more upside than Nurkic, and it depends what else you've done with your other picks, especially. Look, they're both pretty shit free throw shooters, actually. Kyle, you went with Nurkic here, but anything you've seen from Whiteside that would make you second guess this? We're all out on Dwight Howard at this pick, by the way.
Well, I mean, both Nurkic and Whiteside have hit three-pointers this preseason, so that's on the table.
Yami Hindi hit a three-pointer the other day.
Oh, that looked so bad though. Like that was one of them where you're watching it and you're going, yeah, not again. Let's not do that. But send one up to God on that one. But Whiteside only took 1 3-pointer, and Spoelstra said that if it comes within the flow of the offense, he's okay with it. But you're not going to see a lot of them. He didn't attempt out of the 2 Heat preseason games. He did not attempt a 3-point shot in the other game. Nurkic was 1 for 2 on his attempts. So I don't know. It's interesting, and I'm looking at Nurkic, and I feel like there's some untapped upside there because it's almost like the Miles Turner situation in that we had certain expectations for where Nurkic was going to be in his first full season with the Trailblazers last year, and then it was a little bit depressed from what we thought. He wasn't getting necessarily the same minutes that we thought. I thought there was 30 minutes was guaranteed to Nurkic last year, whereas we saw him playing 26 to 28 most nights. This season, after they've signed him to a long-term contract and they got rid of Ed Davis, and I'm not the biggest Zach Collins believer. So from those perspectives, I'm looking at Nurkic and I'm seeing an opportunity that may increase this season. And so that's another reason why I like him. But, I mean, as far as overall potential upside, yes, Whiteside has already shown that he can be, like, I believe a second-round player in the past. So I definitely understand Greg's perspective on this.
Whiteside's got Kelly Olynyk. He's got James Johnson, who plays some center. He's also got Bam Adebayo. Nurkic doesn't really have much in terms of that competition. So you're not, like, as much as I do like Zach Collins, I don't think they're going to say, well, sorry, Nurk, you're just benched and Collins is playing 30 a night this season. Whereas you could see Adebayo on occasional nights playing 28 and Whiteside playing 20, or Olynyk having a strong night and coming in there. So there's a 3-man competition for minutes there, or you could take it away in terms of nightly consistency. Whereas Nurkic, maybe Stotts is the only impact in terms of the consistency moving forward. Let's go to the next one. This one is a whitewash.
Final thought. If the Heat did the Jimmy Butler trade and Whiteside went to Minnesota, though, that's another one to get really engorged about.
Here's the thing on that, though. I've brought this up before. Like, we have no clue what Tibbs values. Like, what is he looking for in a trade when he thinks it's a good idea to start Derrick Rose at shooting guard? Like what is he going to get back that he thinks is a good haul for Jimmy Butler? It's a total wild card in this situation. We don't know. The fit of Whiteside next to Towns makes zero sense to me. Now, for all we know, Tibbs could be looking at it and just goes, "That's the front court that I want." But I just can't imagine that that's the trade. Like, Whiteside's contract is such an albatross. It's such a negative that I can't imagine that he would be the package for Jimmy Butler. But maybe I'm wrong.
I don't know how would they move Taj Gibson to the bench and then start Whiteside and Towns. It's such a weird fit, but if there's anything we know is that weird fits is basically what happens in Minnesota, and just add another poor 3-point shooter into that mix is what has been their MO throughout the time that Thibodeau has been there.
Taj would start at the 3, and Andrew Wiggins would move to the bench.
Run a Kings lineup.
Don't even start me on that. Pick 75. We have whitewashed this. It's Paul Millsap or Nikola Mirotic, and all of us have taken Mirotic. I included this one because I think it was important to mention, because Paul Millsap's ADP is 61 over on Yahoo. His rank on ESPN is 61. He's it's decently high. Whereas Mirotic, who we haven't seen in the preseason yet, dealing with a little bit of Achilles soreness, he's a 71 ADP on Yahoo. He's ranked 105 on ESPN. So they're going to be available around that same point. But to me, and I know for Matt, it's not really a close decision to take Mirotic here over Millsap. It's just me highlighting that some people are going to be forced with that decision because they're going to see those guys there, and some people may take Millsap based on where he falls on the default rankings. Greg, is it close at all?
It's so weird because a year ago I would have said this isn't close. It's easily Paul Millsap. But if we look at how much it seemed like Mirotic kind of reached his potential in the playoffs and after he got traded to the Pelicans last year, I think that he has a pretty secure role now, which we haven't seen from him in the past. One of the things that really was an issue with Mirotic when he was with the Bulls was Hoiberg would very frequently just take him out of the game. He missed 2 shots in a row, and it's like, that's it, Mirotic are coming out of the game, and sometimes he wouldn't even go back in, which I think kind of messed with his confidence a little bit. I'm usually not like a huge narrative type guy, but I think this is a situation where it really did impact him. And now where he's in a spot where he's a really secure role, he kind of has the reign to be able to just play his game. He doesn't have to worry about, if I miss a shot, I'm coming out of the game. I think he's just able to play to his abilities, which is a pretty solid NBA player.
Kyle, any hesitation with you?
Nah, not really. I think there's always the potential that after an injury-plagued season last year for Millsap, that there's the potential for him to do a little bit better this year, whether that's improving his efficiency on the Nuggets or just not having Michael Malone put him into some kind of stupid role that he shouldn't be in. If things are kind of ironed out more sanely this year for the Nuggets offense for the entirety of the season, I think there's the potential that for Millsap to surprise us this year. But in general, no, I'm going to be leaning Mirotic and the potential better production that he's going to offer than what Millsap is.
Yep, can't argue with that. We all had Mirotic there. Let's move on to the next one. Pick number 84. A couple of guys who play different positions but do offer pretty similar stats, which is a weird thing about them. So it's not just about the position, it's about what numbers you're bringing, and that's Dejounte Murray and Kyle Anderson. We've split this one down the middle with Greg and Matt both taking Dejounte, and myself and Kyle both taking Kyle Anderson. Kyle, weirdly enough, Chandler Parsons started over Anderson in the Grizzlies' first preseason game, so shout out to JB Bickerstaff, the number one coach on the shit list at the moment.
Yeah, no, I have to go. I forgot to do it already. I have to go in and change my my Kyle Anderson projection down a little bit, because I had him projected for 33 minutes because I thought there's no way he's not going to start and play, as many minutes as Bickerstaff is going to give a starter, which I thought would be about 33 minutes. Thought, no way. But you're right. Chandler Parsons started in the first preseason game for the Grizzlies, so I know nothing.
I had Anderson at 31. I'm keeping him there just for the moment. But this is the frustrating thing, is that Parsons, look, in the limited minutes he played last season, he shot the ball well, but he played almost exclusively as a power forward. He can barely move, so I don't understand signing a guy playing in big minutes, paying him big money to come in to be your small forward and then putting him on the bench behind a guy who's not the best fit at that position. Yes, it was one preseason game, I know that, but surely get that guy out there. He fits really well with Gasol and Conley. You can stagger him to run second units as well. Look, and if he comes off the bench and he still plays 30 minutes a night, that's fine, but it is a little bit harder to do that unless you're Alvin Gentry and you find it easier to play big minutes to guys coming off the bench. I don't get the thought process, and I was never enamored with Bickerstaff's coaching last season. I didn't understand the hiring process or lack of process they had in Memphis in giving him. It was just like, do you want the job? Are you going to ask for much money? Yes, I want the job. No, not much money. Cool, you can have it. Just a nonsense process. Showed nothing last season, showed nothing in Houston, and I'm going to be hanging shit on him pretty much all season. So it is a real worry there. Now, I have gone with Anderson, because I do believe that Parsons, won't be able to stay healthy, and then Anderson will get those minutes regardless of what the role is. But it is something to pay some attention to with just the ludicrous decisions already creeping in Memphis, starting alongside... Josh, go ahead.
When you lay out the fact that they were so passive in how they hired him, I don't know if that I'm supposed to take... originally when you started talking, I was like, okay, now this is essentially what I'm seeing here is Hollinger, the front office, went out and found Anderson, who's like an advanced stats guy or somebody who you have to have the right perspective on to understand that, like, just because he moves slow doesn't mean he's not good at basketball and all this kind of stuff. Like, there's a lot of Kyle Anderson haters out there because they don't think he's as good as he is, and I think he is that good. I love the way he plays. It doesn't have to be, I don't know. It may seem methodical, but it's extremely intelligent. So I wonder if Anderson was a front office signing, and if Bickerstaff just, I don't know. I can't reason why Chandler Parsons would have been put into that starting lineup to begin, unless they're trying to fool the league into thinking that Chandler Parsons is healthy, which is just not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't get it either. And pair that with starting 32-year-old low upside Garrett Temple over your rookie who played the most minutes out of every rookie last season, Dylan Brooks or Marshawn Brooks, who came on strong, or Wayne Selden, or whoever, one of the young guys that try and develop them. Let's get Garrett Temple out there. This is, the league is all about pushing offense and pushing up tempo, and the Grizzlies, no, we're going to try and get as slow as possible, as boring as possible. It is going to be an absolute drag for this team for this season. But Greg, let's go a little bit more positive. Dejounte Murray in San Antonio should be seeing his minutes rise this season. He's not a guy that helps you in traditional point guard categories, low assists, doesn't hit many threes. But if he adds those numbers on, then perhaps he is that guy that really does smash through this value. Can you see him increasing or at least changing his statistical profile for this season?
Well, not the 3-pointers. The 3-pointers I don't think are coming. The assists I think are possible. I do think he's going to play more minutes this year. The defensive numbers should be nice for a point guard. One of the other things, too, is if I'm projecting that it's possible that we see more assists from Murray playing a lot of minutes at point guard this year, which I think should happen because Tony Parker isn't there in San Antonio. There really aren't that many guys to be able to play point guard for the Spurs. Assists are really difficult to find later in the draft this year. And Murray is one potential good source of assists in the later rounds of the draft, which is one of the reasons that I really like him at this spot.
He's got a pretty low ADP, 109 on Yahoo, which is obviously a pretty low, 90 for Kyle Anderson, but we've got them both ranked significantly higher in the way that our projections come. But I think that he could push towards 5 assists. Maybe Derek White gets more point guard minutes. Patty Mills not really a point guard. Bryn Forbes not really a point guard. They don't have a point forward guy in Kyle Anderson gone. Maybe it's DeMar DeRozan, but you're right. Someone's going to have to start to distribute the ball a little bit more, and Murray could push into a larger role there. Let's look at the next one. It's pick 91. We've got Jaren Jackson Jr., the future MVP, Kyle Kuzma, and Serge Ibaka. Now, we've just talked, Kyle, about the Grizzlies and what they're going to do with the rotations. They started JaMychal Green over Jaren Jackson. Now, Jackson still played well. He was perfect from the field, from three, from the line. He didn't block a shot, but we know that's going to come. But there feels like there's going to be a level of frustration there with Jackson. I went with Jaren there, because I just believe in the upside above a guy like Ibaka, who is trending in the wrong direction. Started the first preseason game off the bench in the second, didn't look great in either personally, and I just find it a little bit hard for Kuzma to do what he did last season, plus just the additional crowding with the addition of LeBron there in LA might make it hard for him to play those 35 minutes a night he was playing post All-Star when he did post up top 80 numbers. That might be a little bit difficult, plus playing out of position at center might cause some struggles. But Cole, you did list none of the above in that area, but there in brackets put Jaren Jackson. So, I've maybe unfairly characterized you as having Jackson there. So what's your concern with this group of guys that I've got listed here at pick 91 based on their ADPs?
Well, I didn't trust JB Bickerstaff to give Jaren Jackson the amount of minutes that I think he deserves from the outset initially. So now that we've actually seen Jaren Jackson's in line to come off the bench behind JaMychal Green, I don't know how long that's going to persist. I don't know how many minutes Jaren Jackson's going to get. And yeah, when you look at his production and the fact that he didn't miss any shots in the first preseason game, and you're not worried about the lack of blocks, whatever. If you watched even the highlights of that game, you could see how keyed in Jaren Jackson is on defense, how good of a job he's already doing, putting his body into guys when they come in to try to get layups. Even if he wasn't doing a great job, you see that the fundamentals are there in regards to his defensive potential. I would be targeting somebody else at the 91st pick rather than Jaren Jackson Jr., Kuzma, or Ibaka, because I worry about all of their ceilings this year due to their team situations. Yeah,
look, I've got Kuzma and Ibaka both probably not being top 100 guys this season. I do worry about what Jackson is going to. Has there ever been any sort of proof that bringing guys along slowly and sitting them down and making them learn actually makes them better players in the long run, rather than putting guys out there and letting them try and develop as the game speeds up alongside better teammates like Gasol and Conley and these starters? I don't think there's been anything definitive about that.
No. There's no way it's true. I mean, the older I get and the longer a perspective I have of the NBA and basketball and all that kind of crap, the more and more I come to a realization that, yeah, there's some guys who develop slow or whatever, but whether or not you put them in the starting lineup and the amount of opportunity you give them, either the guy's an a-hole and he's going to get it and he's going to be a good teammate and he's going to be a good worker and all that kind of stuff, or he's not. And I don't think that, yes, you can create an environment to bring those things out of certain players and whatnot, or to enhance their development. Absolutely. And if you have a poor environment, you can influence a player's development negatively. But for the most part, there's NBA careers are so short, and the NBA season is there's not tons of practices for coaches to evaluate things. There's not, so many of the data sets that we look at, all these teams play against another team or another player 4 times at most throughout the year. So it's so many of our data sets are small sample sizes. And I don't understand why so many of these coaches try to tiptoe around the edges. And I bet a lot of it's just, it's it's office politics. It's who do we have to give these minutes to because they actually came in and worked hard at practice, or they weren't late, or something stupid like that, rather than like who's the best players, let's put them out there.
Yeah, I'm sure that's part of it as well, because you have coaches that just stubbornly don't give these guys minutes. Stan Van Gundy with Luke Kennard, Steve Clifford with Malik Monk last season just refused to play them on the express basis that they were rookies pretty much when they were superior to other options that were there, and you get the feeling that that's some of that old school mentality that sticks around with these guys can cause those issues moving forward. Greg, I didn't ask you your opinion on Jaren Jackson, but I'm going to start you with this one at pick number 106, Jaylen Brown versus Markelle Fultz. All of us went with Markelle Fultz here, which I think would surprise quite a lot of people. Everyone loves Jaylen Brown. I think he's one of the best blokes in the NBA, but he does struggle a little bit fantasy-wise, and we talked about it with Hayward earlier about how is the ball going to be distributed. He struggles with assists. He gets none of them. Rebounds, steals, blocks, they're not high. Poor efficiency. Whereas Fultz, I'm excited. He's starting. I think he's going to start the regular season. I think the minutes are going to push up. He blocks shots at a high rate. I was a little bit skeptical of taking Fultz around that pick 100 mark when I thought he was going to be a 24-minute-a-night bench piece. But, Greg, it doesn't appear like that's going to be the case.
No, and the other issue I have with Jaylen Brown here, as I have to enlarge stuff like comically huge on my iPad because my eyesight is getting so terrible as I get older. Jaylen Brown, like you were saying, there's certain players who just have a really big gap in between the value they provide in real life basketball and the value they provide in fantasy basketball. Jaylen Brown is a very good real life player. He's not like an all-star level player or anything, but he's a very good real life player. He just isn't that in fantasy basketball. I'm not even convinced he's going to be a standard league player this year because he doesn't really do all that much to contribute fantasy wise. He shot 3-pointers decently last year, better than I would have thought. But still, he's a very poor free throw shooter. He doesn't do great things from the field. And the other issue also is, of all the people who are going to lose out on usage and playing time to Gordon Hayward, I think that Jaylen Brown is the guy who stands to lose the most with him coming back.
Yeah, I think that's a legitimate risk there as well. He's a guy that looks spectacular on the court, big dunks and plays hard, and that's all great. But when you're just not getting anything in the assists and you don't generate steals and your percentages are poor and you've got that risk of volume going down, I think he's a risky pick at that zone. Whereas Fultz, who knows what? Maybe he could be a top 60 guy. He could block a shot per game. He could get a steal. He could get 6 assists. Who knows what he's going to do? There is a lot of upside still in Fultz, but I'm feeling a lot more confident with his floor. Kyle, what have you seen much of him through the preseason, and what have you thought if you have?
I think Fultz looks great so far.
Yeah.
There's really not. I would struggle to find negative things to say about him. You worried a little bit about his lack of 3-point shooting in his game. And how that would fit by taking J.J. Redick out of the starting lineup. But you've got Joel Embiid stretching the floor, and Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz are elite at getting to the line, or not getting to the line, but getting to the rack. So it just works. You watch it. There's so much passing going on from these guys between Ben Simmons and Markelle Fultz and everybody else on it's infectious. So, and Dario Saric out there, it's just they've got the right pieces around each other. So, yeah, I love what Fultz is offering. And if you're not worried about the percentages in head-to-head like I do, where I punt the percentages, not necessarily to say, F the percentages completely, but just to say I don't want to think about the percentages when I'm drafting in a head-to-head league because I want as many counting stats as possible, because if I cared about the percentages, I wouldn't be focused on guys like Markelle Fultz. I wouldn't be focused on guys like Dennis Smith as much in my later rounds. And if I can get those guys and they pop, you're all screwed in my leagues. You're all screwed. I don't care about my percentages then. You're all screwed.
All right. Let's you've got that warning there from Kyle. But what you
Trash
said,
talk.
What you said with Fultz, what I would say when I watch him, and I saw this last year, is that he can get wherever he wants. Like when he's got the ball, like you just go, well, he's going to get to this spot. He's going to spin past these guys. He's going to dribble through, and he's going to get where he wants to. Very similar to the way that Harden's able to do it. Of course, he's not James Harden, but the ability to get to that spot is really key, and that's what's going to make things work with him moving forward in the NBA. Add in that ability to get defensive numbers and some assists. It's going to be very interesting to see how he goes. Probably one of the big storylines to me to watch this coming season is how Fultz actually goes in a full NBA season.
One sec. Before we move on, I just want to add one thing on Fultz that I think it's what everybody's been talking about anyways with the jump shot. What's really significant about it to me is if he could just make some of them, Like, he doesn't have to be some crazy efficient 3-point shooter or whatever, but just the threat that he is going to take them and he's capable of making them is going to make people come up and guard him, which is huge for how athletic he is. Because before, people could kind of sag off and be like, well, we know he's not going to shoot. He's shooting now, and the shot looks good enough to me that he should be able to make a decent amount of them. He's certainly going to make them if teams are just going to leave him open. So I think that if people are going to have to come up and guard him, like, he's super talented. He shot the ball well in college. We have no clue what the hell happened last year, but it's just a write-off to me. Whatever, it doesn't matter. That, as far as I'm concerned, the rookie or Markelle Fultz never existed. And there's a reason he was the top overall pick in the draft. He could have, I don't know what the ceiling is this year, but he could be a really good fantasy player this season.
Yeah, look, there's pretty big upside, I think, for Fultz for this coming year. Let's go a little bit later in a draft. Pick number 120, we're looking at wing players here. Rudy Gay, Jeremy Lamb, and Trevor Ariza. Greg and Matt both took Rudy Gay. Me and Kyle both went with Jeremy Lamb. Rudy Gay, look, he appears locked in as the starting small forward in San Antonio. Lamb appears locked in as the starting shooting guard for the Hornets. I think this is pretty close. It was a hard one for me to choose because I've got Gay in quite a few drafts and I've got Lamb in quite a few as well. Greg, what made you side with Rudy over Jeremy?
Yeah, so the big thing for me is just that Kyle Anderson isn't there anymore. So there's not as many minutes for him to compete with in the small forward / power forward spot. And Rudy Gay, when we saw him get extended minutes last year, he looked pretty good. I think that of players we've seen have the Achilles injury, he's been probably the biggest success in terms of return in being the closest to the form he was prior to the injury. And I think that Rudy Gay also is somebody, good fantasy player. He adds kind of everything across the board. Like, he'll get you a block, he'll get you a steal. Like, he could be a 1-1 player this year in the best case scenario.
Yeah, and he was that in his Sacramento days, and that's the reason that Matt has gone with Rudy Gay here, just across the board production, which is really solid in a roto league. I've liked what I've seen from Jeremy Lamb the last couple of seasons. Steve Clifford seemed to hate him, but he looks like his role is going to expand this year. Kylie should be that starting shooting guard who can score, who's a strong rebounder, pretty efficient, and the ball handling's not too bad with him. If he can get the steal numbers up, would be a promising thing. But I think both these guys can be top 100 guys, and they are available around this 120 zone. So, Kyle, have you been impressed? Are you worried at all about Monk coming in behind Lamb or the play of Miles Bridges, perhaps?
I'd be more worried about Miles Bridges from like a shifting perspective in regards to if they want to put Batum back down to shooting guard for some minutes, and that might impact Lamb a little bit if they want to get Miles Bridges in at small forward and still keep Marvin Williams up at power forward, or maybe use Michael Kidd-Gilchrist there. But I think in most respects, you're just going to see Miles Bridges right now step into that backup power forward role, and Michael Kidd-Gilchrist is going to get he's going to get maybe some minutes, but not many.
I think that Bridges is going to, and maybe this is a bold call, I think he's going to take Frank Kaminsky out of the rotation.
Oh, Frank's not playing.
Yeah,
because Frank's playing center this year, and Frank's not playing because Cody Zeller and Willie Hernangomez especially have looked like they got some thick wood they're slanging out there right now.
Shout out to Dennis Smith.
You think Willie for sure ahead of Frank in the rotation?
You should
absolutely.
Yeah.
Frank's trash compared to Willie Hernangomez. Willie's just got a bravado about him out there on the court. I love it.
I'm not a Willie fan.
I don't get. Oh, you know why? Because your trash team that you like screwed him and didn't play him.
But even when he played, like I do think this, when he plays, he's a very good fantasy producer. But when he's on the court, like he doesn't have anything that I would consider to be a particularly good NBA skill. He's a good rebounder.
He's a good rebounder.
But all his baskets are, like, he doesn't have any way to score the basketball. The only way he scores is if he gets a rebound and there's nobody standing around him. He's able to put it back in. Like, I don't see any other way that he scores. He wasn't great as a defensive player when he was on the Knicks.
No, he's a
I think
bad
his
defender.
3-point shot looks so good. Like it's not even you can't make an argument against. I think his 3-point shot just looks legit.
His last game against the Heat, he had 16 and 10 in 17 minutes with 4 blocks. It was pretty impressive there for Bill Hernangomez. My voice is disappearing, so let's move on to the next pick. Pick 134, just throwing in some flyer-type big men here towards the end of a draft. Kyle, I mainly put this one so I could play you the song.
When 2, 3, 4, 5.
Mohamed Bamba and the table, Montrezl Harrell. We all went with Harrell here. I think that Bamba is going to... We know that Steve Clifford hates rookies, and we hear, he's going to play them together. That's great. Him and Vucevic, it's just a shit combination, especially when you've got John Isaac and Aaron Gordon, who can also play at power forward, and Jarrell Martin, who is a power forward on that roster. Not that he's that good, but still another option. I think that Bamba's going to find it hard to get enough minutes. He's a free throw drain as well, which is a concern. Whereas Harrell's a high usage, high field goal percentage guy who's got the potential to overtake Marcin Gortat, or at least split the minutes pretty evenly with him. Whereas in Orlando, it's pretty clear that Vucevic is clearly the better player. Clifford's making the noise that maybe he isn't going to trade him this season, or they're not going to trade him, which would clearly impact what Bamba can do. And maybe Bamba is the better player in March, but for the first 5 months of the season, I think it's pretty clear that it is going to be Harrell, and we all do agree on that one. Anything that you need to speak on that, Greg?
A little concerned about how the Clippers have been practicing with Harrell kind of a part of a third unit in scrimmages. But I think that outside of that, it really shouldn't be the case coming into the regular season. We've even seen the beat reporter who initially reported that Harrell was practicing and scrimmaging with the third team. He said the expectation is that Harrell's going to be on the second team, if not a starter, by the time the season opens up. And then in terms of Bamba, I really like him as a prospect, but there's just too many big men on that roster. Unless they make a roster move, it's hard to see him playing significant minutes.
Yeah, that's one where you're not going to get really much use out of him for the 2018 portion of this season, I don't believe. I don't think he's in as good of a situation as what Mitchell Robinson is in New York, where Robinson's just going to come in and play 20 a night and probably block 2 shots per game to begin the season. I think Bamba will be a little bit slower to kick things off for this coming season. Kyle, do you have anything to add on this one?
Bamba did hit 2 3-pointers, both attempts that he took in the first preseason game against Philly. And I'll say this: he put up as much of a fight as he could against Joel Embiid. But if you watch that game too, Joel Embiid was pushing Vucevic around too. So it's not like it was exclusively against
Joel
Bamba.
Embiid's the biggest man I've ever seen.
Yeah,
I haven't seen Shaq in person, but Embiid he's a monster.
So, yeah, I guess I'm a little bit higher on Bamba over the last week than what I was prior. And with Harrell, I don't know if they're playing Danilo Gallinari at center in some lineups. So we'll see what happens, man.
Let's go on to one of our last selections here. We're going low again, but we're talking point guards. Pick 135, Patrick Beverley, Colin Sexton, or Rajon Rondo are the options here. Matt has he decided to be a wild card and throw Trey Burke in because I didn't put him in that list, but that's fair enough. You can definitely have Trey Burke there, and I probably would too, but Matt, that wasn't the question. So he went with Patrick Beverley, who was a top 70 player last year before the knee injury. Kyle, you, me, and Matt all went with Beverley there in that role. He does have that favorable contract. There's Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is around, but I think Beverley, even in 30 minutes a night, can contribute enough to be useful at that area. I do worry about where Rondo's minutes are going to be like when Lonzo returns. Colin Sexton, I think he's going to have a ton of efficiency, low steal, low 3, low assist type numbers, although he did look good in preseason. So, Greg, I'll give you the floor first. Convince me as to why it's Sexton.
Yeah, so I think that there's a lot of usage to fill in Cleveland now that LeBron is gone. We don't know how healthy Kevin Love is going to be this year because he's gotten injured a lot the last few seasons. So I'm taking Sexton here just kind of based on the upside. I think Beverly's fine. Later in the draft, if I could take somebody like Sexton, who I'm not really committed to, if the pick busts, so what? I drop him. It's not a big deal.
That's fair.
Towards the end of the draft.
He had 15 points in 23 minutes in his first preseason game and shot the ball pretty well, 46% from the field, hit 2 threes, but again, just 1 assist, and that's where 1 assist, 0 steals, and again, it's 1 game in preseason, but this is what his numbers profiled from college, it's what it looked like in summer league, and that's where I get the worry. He could, and I said this the other day, is that he could come out, he could very easily average 16 points per game, but you could also be an Andrew Wiggins-based 16 points per game where you do nothing else in those other areas, and everyone shits all over Wiggins for fantasy, he's terrible, wouldn't draft him, blah, 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 but Sexton could come out and have the same numbers but worse, and people would still be really all over him just because he's a rookie and because he says a lot of words when he's on defense. And I'm not against drafting Sexton. I completely understand that reasoning there. I just think that Beverley probably has top 70 upside this season, even in 30 minutes. So it's a value pick for me there. Kyle, did you think about this more closely? Were you debating which direction to go?
I mean, if you think Rondo is going to play more minutes than what I do, and you need assists, then that might be the way to go. But I just don't trust that Sexton's going to command the role that people think, as long as George Hill's on that team, as long as Jordan Clarkson's there as well. So I thought Sexton looked pretty darn good doing what he does. But like you pointed out, Josh, he doesn't do a lot. He does a couple of things. He does them okay.
He scores.
Yeah, he scores the ball.
That's what he does.
And he's like, what, 6'1"?
Yeah.
Have fun with that, Cleveland.
Yeah, that's the worry, is that it's going to be inefficient scoring and very little else, and that's where the concern comes in, I think, with Sexton for this season and moving forward. But he is going to be someone who's going to get an opportunity at some point this season, no doubt about that. Let's go on to the last one we're going to look at here. It's a big man. It's a last pick type of situation. Bam Adebayo versus Jakob Hurdle for the last pick. Now, I use this example because they're both with that. Yeah, Adebayo's got an ADP of 138 on Yahoo for some reason. Pirtle's at 134, both at that same sort of area. But we have clean swept it once again with Jakob Hurdle, who I do think is going to have an opportunity to start in San Antonio, at least some games, and probably end up playing around the same amount as Pau Gasol, a high efficiency shot blocking guy who can get rebounds and showed some pretty significant improvements last season in Toronto. Was this close for anybody, Greg? Close at all?
Not really for me, and the main reason is just the road to playing time for Adebayo.
Yep.
If there is to be a trade where they're able to offload Whiteside somewhere, then this would easily be Adebayo for me. But just with as many big men as they have there right now, with Whiteside and Olynyk and James Johnson and Adebayo, it's hard for me to really see the upside or even the path to him being a for sure ownable player in standard leagues, just because of how many bigs there are on the roster.
Yeah, exactly. That's sort of how I view it. Kyle, what do you think?
That's pretty much, you guys laid it out. And I'm excited that Pirtle's like the one big man this year that's like, nah, I'm not shooting 3-pointers. They're not adding that to my game.
It's going to be him and Ben Simmons, the only guys over 6'9" who don't shoot threes.
Is Ben really not going to shoot
Nah,
threes?
He's definitely going to shoot. He's going to shoot at least 1 3 that's not an end of the buzzer heave. At least one. I think he's going to make. I think I've got him projected at making 6 for this year. So we'll see how that works out. I'll double check that. But he's surely. I know he can hit them. This is the thing. I know he can hit them. But he just won't do it.
That's the thing about so many of these guys who choose not to take 3-pointers. I get it. Like, you're so good at these other things and you're a perfectionist or whatever. But like, just take the damn shot. We know what gravity does in the NBA these days. Just take the damn shot.
That was what I heard on Nate Duncan's latest podcast talking about the greatest 8 players of all time, and I was talking about Kevin Garnett, how he just refused to take threes, but would just knock down all long twos, and in warm-ups would just be hitting millions of threes in a row, and could do it and just refuse to do it in games. So I don't know what that is about it, and maybe it is that perfectionist thing, like, oh, if I can't do this better than everyone else, then I'm just not going to do it. And I understand that mentality from these guys. But I reckon, guys, that will wrap it up for today's show, battling through some 15 different spots in drafts to discuss our thoughts. Kyle, thank you again for coming on. But give your latest article on Basketball Monster a plug.
Thank you. You can find me on Twitter at RotoKyleNBA, and I've got a preseason update, risers and fallers, Atlanta to Memphis. Thanks for whoever corrected my Atlanta to LA edit that I accidentally posted initially on the article. But and then my the second half of where essentially I go through each team and I tell you who's rising and falling in value based on my perception of how things have unrolled so far in the preseason. And the second half of the league will be up late tonight. So yeah.
So that's for all you Basketball Monster subscribers. Go follow Kyle and go check out that article that's up, and the second part coming up in a day or two. Greg, give us a plug of what you're doing.
Yes, you guys follow me on Twitter at GEhrenbergDFS, and I have a TV show to promote now. I'm on television. So if you live in the tri-state area, I am on SNY, which is a channel the Mets play on a show called The Sweat. We are every Sunday from 11:30 a.m. to 12 to talk about football games, and I've been doing pregame shows for baseball at 6:30 p.m.
So go and check Greg out over there. I'm sure that all those shows will be coming out as a DVD box set at some point. For us who aren't in the tri-state area, we can get a hold of that, Greg. I'm sure I'll hit you up later on for the details there. So go follow Greg on Twitter and watch TV's Greg Ehrenberg over on whatever station that was that I have no idea and I don't remember. But sure, go and watch Greg on TV. It'll be fantastic. Guys, subscribe to this podcast, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube. Thumbs it up, 5-star. You know the way to go, and follow me on Twitter at redrock_bball. Greg and Kyle, thank you.
Peace out, homie.
Thanks for having us on, Josh, and I hope everybody enjoyed looking at our faces.
Guys, we are done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya. Anthony Simons.